5 weeks ago, it was only 5 weeks ago that Joe Biden was running against Donald Trump. At that point, the New York Times national polling average gave Trump a 3-point lead. Well, it's been 5 weeks now. It's been two conventions now. And Harris has flipped the race and now has a 3-point edge. So we all wondered back then, what's the Harris advantage? Well, it looks like nationally it's like 6 points so far. We're still getting into this thing. But anyway, Biden at that point was also down 4 or more points in the key states, swing states such as Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. Well, things are moving fast, especially coming out of the DNC. And so we want to catch up a little bit on what the polling is saying. And there's big headlines like latest presidential poll indicates small lead is exploding. Exploding being a good verb in this case. So this is a Fairleigh Dickinson University survey that gives Harris a 7-point national advantage over Trump. That lead has grown and, really interestingly, grows substantially when you prime voters to think about the topics of race and gender. So when you mention issues related to the sex of the candidates, Harris generates a 10-point lead. And when the race of the candidates is mentioned, she holds a 14-point lead, which is pretty huge. And just a reminder to Harris that, maybe get Trump to talk about these things on the debate stage because it does not help him at all.
A storm is tearing up the digital media industry. Only our audience can save us in these difficult times. Help us reach our goal of 100,000 new members at tyt.com/team.
Here is the updated New York Times tracker on the big swing state polls. Nationally, they have her up by 3, as we said, up 2 in Michigan, 2 in Wisconsin, tied in Pennsylvania, still a tough one in Pennsylvania, tied in Arizona, and down by 4 points in Georgia, which apparently both states are going to be zeroing in on. Harris is about to go and do a tour of Georgia, campaigning through there. And we do know that Donald Trump recently attacked the popular Republican governor of Georgia, Brian Kemp, for no reason, calling him Little Brian Kemp. I don't know why.
Oh,
now, Little Brian Kemp is a good little boy, and he is still lining up behind Donald Trump, endorsing him. He said that the DNC was a sugar high. I love that their best attack is to say, well, sure, it was great and everyone had fun, but it won't last. So that's the best attack they have. But anyway, that's the current state of things. A couple swing states still very close, but she has pulled, other than Georgia, she's pulled into parity or is leading. What do you make of all this?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is really good news. This is important. It's what the Dems wanted coming out of the DNC. I still think we need more. We need to pull away in a lot of different places. You need to activate the Democratic base, give people a reason to vote. We need to see interviews from Kamala Harris. We need to see, some actual meeting with the Palestinian Americans and Muslim Americans who she says she hears and she listens to. But let's actually see those meetings take place now that we know we didn't get a speaker at the DNC itself. One thing I want to note that's really interesting is when the polling asks about race or gender. It's not what I'm assuming, John, it's not what that person's race or gender is. It is when you mention Kamala Harris's race or gender. And the fact that the increase is even greater and Kamala's running away with it, and yet she barely, if at all, has talked about being possibly the first female president, obviously the first, Indian, the first Blasian, let's be real, the first Blasian president. She doesn't talk much about race or gender. And I think that speaks to a couple really quick things, which is Americans are not allergic to woke, right? They don't not like you because you're a person of color or you're a woman, but maybe they do prickle when people talk about it openly, which says a lot more about our fragility, unhealed wounds of racial divides and legacies of slavery and Jim Crow, sexism, than it does about whether people are actually racist or sexist. Do you know what I mean, John? You don't want to openly talk about it or tout it, but you don't want to be considered a racist or a sexist. And in fact, you're not a racist or a sexist. And in fact, you would love to see a woman in charge and a black woman in charge.
Yeah, I think, look, they're definitely campaigning on this very differently than Clinton did. It's a different country to some extent than it was. And I think that they've they've landed on, I think, a very successful strategy where they're perhaps getting some of the benefits of campaigning in a way that they're not, so they don't get the negatives. And Donald Trump is just like running into a field of rakes to start stepping on them.
Yes.
And so I like it. I would perfectly be fine if she wanted to talk about it more than she does, but they seem to think, everybody, I guess, gets it. We don't need to focus on it, but I'm glad that it's not. Everybody was worried, I think reasonably, that America is a misogynistic and racist country. So if she's the candidate, it might hurt her. It's good to know that isn't necessarily the case. Maybe there's some progress in America.
Well, but I also there's work to
super
do.
last point to you.
No, yeah, you can.
No,
no,
you get the
no, you don't. You go. You
okay,
go.
well, we will talk more about the polling. Don't you worry about that.